Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update from RAU'S IAS. Do not forget to subscribe to our Telegram channel for all the updates and materials.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper analysis from the perspective of civil services examination.
Today we are going to take up two things. Explained section of Indian Express of the past week and today's The Hindu newspaper. The articles which we are going to discuss today have been displayed on the screen, and let us now begin the discussion. So the first article which we have taken, the cooling off period for retired bureaucrats before joining a new job. Now this cooling off period has come into news because Archana Goel Gulati, a 1989 batch official of Indian Post and Telecommunication Accounts and Finance Services, has joined Google as Chief of Public Policy after taking voluntary retirement from the civil service. The officer, who served in Niti Aayog as Joint Secretary and Advisor for Information and Communication Technology, and before that she served in Department of Telecom. And this is of course not the first time where a civil servant or a judge has joined private sector or has taken appointment or has taken position in union or state government. There have been various instances even before that. And discussion and debate on such topics is extremely important from the perspective of governance of our country. If you look into GS Paper 2 syllabus, role of civil services in a democracy is a part of your syllabus. Similarly, in GS Paper 4, this ethical issue also gets covered. Now, why is this an ethical issue? We all know that while government servants are serving their term in central or state government in their capacity, they do not work and they cannot work. But how is their working in a private sector after their retirement is a cause for concern. Now it is a cause for concern because these people serve as policymakers. They decide on schemes and policies and they take important decisions on behalf of the government of India when they are in central secretariat, when they are in the state secretariat. These decisions end up helping a lot of players and private sector is one of those players. So for example, as a secretary of Department of Telecom, an IAS officer can take a lot of decisions which can directly or indirectly impact both major players like Airtel and Jio. It could also hurt the interest of either of the companies, and if that bureaucrat after retirement joins the board of governor of Reliance or Jio, then you can see that the decisions which they are taking in their service is impacting the job prospects post-retirement. So you can clearly understand that their pre-retirement decisions or policies are impacting their post-retirement prospects, which is a clear case of conflict of interest. And that is why the concept of cooling off period has been inserted into rules. All India Services rules, which governs the post-retirement commercial employment of all India services like Indian Administrative Services, Indian Police Services and Indian Forest Services. Similarly, the similar rules for central services like Indian Revenue Services, Indian Post and Communication Services is governed by Central Civil Services rules, which mandate a cooling off period, which means that once you take a retirement, once you retire from your job, there is a fixed amount of period you cannot take up any employment. And this is done so that all those people who have knowingly or unknowingly helped public or private companies, they cannot immediately join or serve these companies for remuneration. Once that cooling off period is done, then you can join these companies. And so what it does is that it reduces the possibility of a person helping out and joining a private sector, because 1 year, 2 year, 3 years of time will make it less profitable proposition for a IAS officer to help a private company, knowing fully well that that company will not be able to help him or her monetarily before 1 or 2 or 3 years. And so in this discussion, we are going to understand the concept of cooling off period. So as we have already seen, post-retirement commercial employment for 3 services, 3 All India services is covered under All India Services Death Cum Benefit rules, whereas for Central Civil Services, it is covered under Central Civil Services rules. So the cooling off period for Central Civil Servants is 1 year. Before the expiry of 1 year from the date of his or her retirement, he shall obtain the previous sanction of the government to such acceptance. So, cooling off period is not absolute. It is generally applicable to everyone, but exemptions can be granted on a case-to-case basis, which we'll understand in a short while. Similarly, for All India Services, again the cooling off period is 1 year, and again the government can provide exemption from this sanction on a case-to-case basis. Now, what if a civil servant does not comply with these rules? So, non-compliance with these rules can lead to the government declaring that the employee shall not be entitled to the whole or such part of the pension and for such period as may be specified. So, you can clearly see that there are no criminal consequences, but there are definitely financial consequences of violating these rules. So, when the government debars civil servants from joining post-retirement commercial employment, what does it mean? What are the various jobs or employments which are included in this sanction? So employment in any capacity include that of an agent or under a company or even for a cooperative society or for a firm or individual engaged in trading or business. But this firm or individual engaged in trading or business does not applies to public sector undertakings or PSU, because the rules clearly say that employment under a body corporate wholly or substantially owned or controlled by central or state government. This code does not include these. So an IAS officer immediately after retirement can join the board of ONGC, but cannot do so for Tata Group unless and until an exemption is granted. Apart from this, the bar also extends to setting up of any kind of practice either independently or as a partner of a firm, as advisor or consultant in certain matters specified under the rules, and it also includes matters that are relatable to the pensioner's official knowledge or experience, which is basically to avoid direct conflict of interest in post-retirement jobs. So we have seen that generally the cooling off period is extended for 1 year after the retirement, but government of course can grant exemption from this rule. So when does the government allow or turn down such requests from pensioners? So these rules specify several factors for the government to consider while granting or refusing both permissions. So first and foremost, we have to understand that the no objection certificate for the proposed employment has been obtained from the cadre controlling authority and from the office where the officer retired. So for example, cadre controlling authority for Indian Police Service is Ministry of Home Affairs. So if an officer retires today and wants to serve in some private sector, they will have to first approach Ministry of Home Affairs and from the state or from the agency where they last retired. Then, whether the officer has been privy to sensitive or strategic information in the last 3 years of the service that is directly related to the work of the organization he proposes to join, which makes absolute common sense. Whether there is conflict of interest between policies of the office he has held in the last 3 years and the interests or work of this organization. Exactly the example which we considered in the first slide, which is about a person retiring from Department of Telecom joining a Reliance Jio organization. Or whether this organization has been in conflict with or prejudicial to India's foreign relations, national security and domestic harmony. Whether the organization he proposes to join is undertaking any activity for intelligence gathering, all these will obviously form for either getting the exemption or not getting the exemption. Of course, conflict of interest does not include normal economic competition with the government or its undertaking. So it has been clearly mentioned that if a person wants to join a private sector which is competing with a public sector undertaking, that would not qualify as a conflict of interest. So this cooling off period of 1 year is applicable only for the list of items we saw, and we did not see any kind of political engagement over there. So there is no rule, however, to stop government servants from joining politics immediately after retirement, and that's how you see so many bureaucrats contesting election immediately the next day after retiring from their government jobs or taking voluntary retirement, and that is a big problem. That is a big problem because while serving in the government, they might be helping, they might be partial, they might be inclined towards a political party and helping that political party throughout, and whenever there is a time for election, they might get the ticket to contest legislative assembly or member of parliament elections, and that is how their work is paid off. So while in the service, the conduct rule bar government servants from being associated with any political party or organization and from taking part in any or assisting any political activity. So that is applicable only as far as you are serving the government. But as soon as you retire, none of the obligations even related to cooling off period is applicable on you. These rules were amended in 2014, which added few clauses to Rule 3.1, which said, every government employee shall at all times maintain political neutrality and commit himself to and uphold the supremacy of the Constitution and democratic values. And so, as we have seen, there is no rule. Now in 2013, Election Commission had written to Department of Personnel and Training suggesting a cooling off period for bureaucrats joining politics after retirement, but it was rejected. It was rejected because Ministry of Law raised an objection that such a bar on cooling off period may not stand the test of valid classification under Article 14 of the Constitution. As we all know that Article 14 of the Constitution provides for two kinds of equality: equality before law and equal protection of law, which enables reasonable classification, the classification or division of people into groups who are treated differently, but that classification should be reasonable. Now that is another matter and discussion altogether, but here, just to make it clear for you, that if we debar just a section of our people, which is bureaucrats, from entering into politics after retirement, that might not hold the test of right to equality and equal protection of law under Article 14, and that is why Legislative Department of Ministry of Law advised that any such restriction may not stand the test of valid classification under Article 14 of the Constitution. The next news which we have taken is from explained section again. Why VPN providers believe new rules will undermine users' privacy. So on 26th of April, CERT-IN, which is a wing of Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, mandated that virtual private network providers should keep for 5 years data including users' contact details, original and Fox IP addresses, and their purpose behind using the services. And it is now being protested and resisted by all the stakeholders. So starting with, what is a VPN and how do these networks function? So all of us know that any and all devices connected to the internet are a part of large network of computers, servers and other devices spread across the world. Now for the identification of each and every device connected to the internet, service providers globally assign a unique address to each such device called Internet Protocol Address or IP address. It is this IP address that helps websites, law enforcement agencies and even companies to track down individual users and their accurate geophysical location. Now, a virtual private network, when switched on, essentially creates a safe network within the larger global network of the internet and masks the IP address of the user by rerouting the data. Acting as a tunnel, a VPN takes data originating from one server and masks it in a different identity before delivering it to the destination server. And so in essence, a VPN creates several proxy identities for your data and delivers it safely without disturbing the content of the data. And most of you might have used VPN to access various kinds of apps and websites. For example, all those people who wanted to use TikTok or various Chinese apps which were banned as a consequences of worsening relation between India and China, they were using VPN because what VPN does, once your mobile gets connected to a VPN server, it bounces the data off from a server of another country to the global internet. So without VPN, you would be accessing that global internet directly and you would be debarred from using some of the services provided by the internet. But now what you are doing is that you are routing your data through VPN secretively, and to the global internet it will appear that you are accessing the internet from Japan, from Sweden, from USA, wherever this server might be located. And this is a very beneficial service to be used by most of the people because it provides privacy and anonymity, which can be very crucial for some of the works that people are performing. For example, journalists, activists, because it helps them avoid being tracked by websites, cyber criminals, as well as from the government. Because it masks your location and the location of your device, it prevents government and law enforcement agencies from accurately identifying the location. And so VPN has been extremely important in the countries that try to suppress the dissent. By using VPNs, dissidents are able to spoof their location and stay safe. So what does the CERT-IN want VPN service providers to keep and why? So as per the 26 April notification, it has asked VPN service providers to maintain for 5 years or longer details such as the validated names of their customers, the period for which they hired the service, the IP addresses allocated to these users, the email addresses, the IP addresses and the timestamps used at the time of registration of the customers. Certain also wants VPN service providers to maintain data such as the purpose for which the customer used their services, their validated addresses and contact numbers, and the ownership pattern of the customers. One of the main reasons that Certain provided for seeking these details is that it will help to effectively trace antisocial elements, cyber criminals indulging in various nefarious activities online. So 8 months after hitting a record high of 642.45 billion in September 2021, India's foreign exchange reserves have now fallen below $600 billion mark amid capital outflows and strengthening dollar. And so this becomes extremely important from the perspective of prelims examination. Before we go into the detail, there is a screenshot taken from RBI's weekly report. States foreign exchange reserves. And so you can see there are 4 heads under which the total reserves are maintained: foreign currency assets, gold, SDRs, and reserve position in IMF. You can clearly see that total reserve as of 29th of April stand at $597 billion, which is around $45 billion less than its peak amount of $642 billion. Apart from this, you can also see that the highest amount of foreign exchange reserves are maintained in form of foreign currency assets. So RBI holds a lot of foreign currencies, not just dollar, but 3-4 other currencies as well. Then RBI holds on to gold, which stands at around $41 billion. Then SDRs around $18 billion, and reserve position in IMF is the least at $5 billion. And you can see that there has been decline in all of them as compared to the last week. So total reserve have declined by $2 billion in 1 week, out of which the decline was $1 billion in foreign currency assets. If we compare it with the last month, the decline has been $9 billion overall. And if we compare it with the same month last year, which is March-April 2021, it is an overall increment of $9.7 billion. But the foreign currency reserves have declined by around $13 billion. So we have clearly seen that the decline has been pretty sharp. As we have seen, foreign exchange reserves declined by around $2.6 billion to $597 billion during the week ending in April 29th. With this fall, foreign exchange reserves have declined by around $44.7 billion from $642 billion recorded on September 3, 2021. And in that table, we have also seen that decline has been majorly on account of fall in foreign currency assets, which is the major component of overall reserves. The foreign currency assets also include effect of appreciation or depreciation of non-US units like the euro, pound and yen held in the reserves. And so to make it more clear, you can clearly see that foreign currency assets are mentioned always in dollar. So right now we have $532 billion in foreign currency assets. But this complete $532 billion is not held in dollar. It is held in 3-4 currencies. And if their relationship with dollar is changing, for example, let's say pound is becoming stronger with respect to dollar. Let's consider a hypothetical situation where 1 pound yields $1 and pound becomes stronger and 1 pound becomes $2. And so whatever amount of pound we have in our foreign exchange reserve will become double in terms of dollar. And that is how, when the foreign exchange reserve is held in multiple currencies and when their relationship with dollar changes, this whole amount inflates or deflates. Apart from that, inflows and outflows of foreign investment into and outside the country also matters a lot. And so a major reason for the decline in foreign exchange reserve is the capital outflows by foreign portfolio investors who pulled out around $21.43 billion since September last year, when our foreign exchange reserve was at peak. The biggest fall was in March, when FPIs pulled out around $6.56 billion. The demand for dollar also remained high as the Russia-Ukraine war led to a spike in oil and commodity prices, apart from depreciation of other currencies. And that is what is known as valuation loss, reflecting the appreciation of the US dollar against major currencies, which we have just understood. And decline in gold prices have also played a part in the major decline in the foreign exchange reserves. And so when you look at this chart of total reserves, you can see that foreign currency assets as well as gold both have declined, contributing to $44 billion net loss or decline in foreign exchange reserve for RBI. Next, we are going to take up 2 articles which have appeared in today's Sunday The Hindu newspaper.
What are India's plans to avert a wheat crisis? With procurement of wheat dipping, how will the government balance domestic supplies and rise in export demand? So on 4th of May, the government lowered its wheat production estimates by around 5.7% to 105 million tons from the projected 111 million ton for the crop year ending in June. The production is expected to fall on account of unusually warm weather conditions that persisted during March and April. And so in this context, it is important for us to have a look at few of the dimensions of this issue. First and foremost, India is the second largest producer of wheat in the world, with China being the top producer and Russia the third largest. Ukraine is the world's 8th largest producer of the wheat. And as you know that there is a war going on between Ukraine and Russia, because of which the supplies of wheat from Ukraine are expected to be much lower. So after 5 straight years of bumper wheat output, India has had to revise downwards its estimated production. And one of the reasons is unprecedented heat waves across north, west and central parts of the country, which are the major producers of wheat in our country. So what about government procurement? As all of us know that government procures wheat on minimum support prices, and this year the government's wheat purchase has seen dip, and that can be mainly attributed to 3 reasons. Of course, due to heat waves, lower yield. Then higher market prices being offered by the private traders. So there are a lot of private traders who are acquiring wheat at a prices which are higher than minimum support prices, and so farmers are preferentially selling their produce directly to the traders instead of choosing the government, which has been the norm so far. At the same time, farmers also know that the prices of wheat is going to go up. They are going to shoot in coming months, and because of which they are holding on to stocks of wheat. A massive amount of stocks are still being held by the farmers. They are neither selling it to traders nor to government, and hence the supply of wheat is curbed due to these 3 reasons. Private traders have been prompted to buy more wheat from the farmers as the price of wheat at international level has shot up and is expected to rise due to ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. In Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Gujarat, farmers are selling to traders, exporters at a price which ranges between 21 to 24 per kg, which is much better than MSP, which the government has declared at 20.15 rupees per kg. So how is this going to impact our public distribution system? As you know that wheat procurement is undertaken by the central government owned Food Corporation of India and other agencies at MSP to meet the requirements under public distribution system and various other welfare schemes such as Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, which was introduced in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic to ensure food security to marginalized section of the society. And so the government has revised the grain allocation under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana for May to September 2022. According to the new guidelines, the FCI will fill the gap left by the wheat with an increased allocation of rice. An additional 5.5 million ton rice is being allocated to the states to fill the gap in supplying wheat grain. Under the National Food Security Act, the annual requirement is roughly around 35 million tons. So will the domestic wheat prices be hit? Of course, as the government's wheat procurement has dipped, concerns are being raised about the stability of the prices in the country and availability of grain for internal consumption, which many agri experts argue should be a priority. The government has to ensure that market price for the domestic consumer is not determined by private players. And this can happen if 1 or 2 big businesses house are buying chunk of the wheat crop. And so the key question is, in a scenario where private traders start dictating the price in domestic market, will the buffer stock be used under open market sale scheme to control the market price, or will it be used for National Food Security Act and other welfare schemes? So when the government will see that the prices of wheat are increasing without any control, they are going to release a lot of wheat which they have conserved, preserved, stored for a very long time as a buffer. The release of wheat into the open market is going to increase the supply of the wheat, because of which the prices will automatically fall. But the government has dismissed concern about the prices of stocks, asserting that India is in a comfortable situation with overall availability of grains and stocks expected to be higher than the minimum requirement for the next 1 year. So what is the impact which this increase in price is going to have on farmers? farmers will certainly benefit from the scenario as they are being offered a price above MSP. And amid the Russia-Ukraine crisis, new markets in countries like Israel, Egypt, Tanzania and Mozambique have opened up for India. However, on the other hand, if private traders continue to buy above MSP, eventually that could stoke inflation. Although more private buying of wheat will help India expand the agri-export basket to new countries, riding the current crisis situation. This trade relationship will stay even when the global crisis is over, which means farmers will get about 10 to 15% extra price as market prices are ruling above MSP. So how is the global supply situation shaping up? So in order to meet the gap created by reduced Russian and Ukrainian exports, importers are turning to alternative markets, while wheat producing countries like India are looking to increase exports. According to United States Department of Agriculture or USDA, the export estimates of Brazil, which is traditionally an importer of wheat, is pegged at around 2.5 million tons, nearly 3 times of its total of last year. South American country has even found new markets, with its wheat exports to West Asian nations jumping over 400% according to Reuters. So this last news which we have taken up for today has again appeared in the Hindu newspaper, the food labeling. What is the debate around the nutritional information packaging that FSSAI has mooted? So FSSAI has come down with new draft regulation on food packaging. Although it has not been finalized, but still a lot of debate is going on with respect to its need as well as its effectivity. So when you buy a food packet or a packaged food from market, you see various calorie, nutritional information displayed on that packet. But FSSAI has come up with new draft and we'll see that. But first let us understand why is there a need for such information to be displayed on packaged food. And the reason behind that is India's epidemiological transformation. The kind of diseases and the mortality and morbidity induced due to those diseases and the landscape is changing. In past 3 decades, the country's disease pattern has shifted. While mortality due to communicable, maternal, neonatal, nutritional diseases has declined and India's population is living longer, non-communicable diseases and injuries are increasingly contributing to overall disease burden. And we know that most of the non-communicable diseases are caused either due to genetics or due to lifestyle. And what we eat contributes mainly to our lifestyle. Apart from that, Indians also have a disposition for excessive fat around stomach and abdomen, which leads to increased risk of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diseases. According to National Family Health Survey 5, around 47% of the men and 56.7% of women have high risk waist to hip ratio. So increased consumption of packaged and junk food has also led to double burden of undernutrition and overnutrition among children. Over half of the children and adolescents, whether undernourished or with normal weight, are at the risk of cardiovascular diseases. And so, reducing sugar, salt and fat is among the best ways to prevent, control non-communicable diseases. While the FSSAI requires mandatory disclosure of nutrition information on food packets, this is located on the back of the packet and it's difficult to interpret. And that is why FSSAI has come up with new set of rules. These include threshold levels to be used to determine whether a food product has high sugar, salt or fat. Apart from that, the rules implementation will be voluntary for a period of 4 years and then it will become mandatory. And the health star rating system that would be used as labels on the basis of study which was conducted by IIM Ahmedabad. And the food industry agreed with FSSAI's decision on issue of mandatory implementation and use of ratings, but the biggest contention is over the use of health star rating that uses half a star to 5 stars to indicate the overall nutritional profile of a product. And this is exactly because of which the packaged food industry has come in the opposition of the rules. So why is there such an opposition to this rating system? There is an opposition because scientists have said that such a system misrepresents nutrition science and the presence of fruit in a fruit drink does not offset the impact of added sugar. Because similar systems across the globe, for example in Australia and New Zealand, have resorted to this kind of star rating. A product is assigned a certain number of stars using a calculator designed to assess the positives, for example whether it contains nuts, fruits, protein content or not, and risk nutrients like high calories, saturated fat, total sugar and sodium. And so, the stars can also lead to a health halo because of their positive connotation, making it harder to identify harmful products. There are many other labeling systems in the world, such as warning labels in Chile, which uses black, octagonal, or stop symbols. Israel uses red label for products high in sugar, salt, and fat. The Nutri-Score used in France presents a color scale from A to E, and the multiple traffic light used in UK and other countries which depict red as high, amber as medium, green as low to indicate the risk factors. And so the global studies have shown a warning label is the only format that has led to positive impact on food and beverage purchases, forcing the industries to reformulate their products to remove major amounts of sugar and salt. So instead of using the star signs like what we rate in Uber, Ola, Zomato or in Google Play Store, we should be adopting labeling like red, green and orange to indicate the harmful or the beneficial impact overall which a product is going to have.